Hi there. Thank you for tuning in to Grow Your Gifts. Today we're going to talk about B.F. Skinner, one of the early child care theorists. He's a psychologist, American psychologist from 1904 to 1990. And yes, I'm doing videos one after the other here, just posting them on different days. And I'll get to all that later on. So for now, just go over B.F. Skinner, whose work had a significant impact on early childhood learning and development. There is operant conditioning. Skinner's core concept is that behavior is shaped by its consequences. He believed that this was the most important type of learning. And reinforcement schedules. Skinner's theory on reinforcement schedules explain how the timing and frequency of reinforcement affect behavior. Skinner believed that effective teaching must be based on positive reinforcement, which is, he argued, more effective at changing and establishing behavior than punishment. He suggested that the main thing people learn from being punished is how to avoid punishment. Duck and roll, you know? It's horrible. Um, so we use this a lot working with children with autism. We would find their primary reinforcer, usually an edible, like a food item, and we would have it ready to go. So as soon as they got the answer right to whatever we're asking, how many legs does a dog have, and it's something that is hard for them to learn, and we pair it with things that they already know, questions that they already know, and then they get it right. They get their high reinforcer right away. Sometimes it was like squishing a ball or, sensory, like they would get a certain massage, like for their face. I don't know, like different things. Like whatever their primary reinforcer was, that's what we go right in with. And amazing, you did it. Circus is coming to town. Way to go. So if they kind of got the answer right, they get their secondary reinforcer. If they didn't get it right at all, they just get like a general positive reinforcement. Okay, nice try. Let's move on. So, uh, something like that. This very general sort of IBI therapy example of working with children with autism in a very fast paced type of therapy where positive reinforcement is everything. And again, I'm not, don't shoot the messenger. Like, that's my that's my take on all these psychologists and everything. I don't know these people. And I don't judge them as humans. Everybody's on a human journey. It's, I take away their message, and their message has really positively impacted me. So thank you, I say, and move on. So, what is operant conditioning in early childhood education? Operant conditioning emphasizes how behavior is influenced by rewards and punishments, and ultimately determines the frequency and persistence of behavior. Overall, operant conditioning is highly relevant in child psychology, which provides, practical tools and for shaping and modifying children's behavior and habits. Very cool. What is a real life example of B.F. Skinner theory? For example, if your child does chores without being asked, you can reward them by taking them to a park or giving them a treat. That's so awesome if your child does chores without being asked. I mean, can you imagine? That's the world I want to live in. uh, and I can help you get there. But anyway, Skinner used a hungry rat in a Skinner box to show how positive reinforcement works. Okay, I love animals. I'm not about animal testing, but there you have it. Okay, so uh, what are the key elements in Skinner's learning theory? Drawing from the principles of B.F. Skinner's theory, here are 7 key applications that can be utilized in an educational setting. Oh, and I have to say this too, like, this is all from the internet. I'm just reading screenshots from the internet and whatever comes to mind from my early childhood, many years, many years of experience, and working with older children as well and families. I will just interject and say what comes to mind, and hopefully it's helpful. So, what are the key elements of Skinner's learning theory? So, he had 7 key applications that can be utilized in an educational setting: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. something about punishment, shaping behavior, continuous reinforcement, intermittent reinforcement. We'll get more into that later. Which is a good example of operant conditioning in the classroom. Students can be given the option to pick from a prize box that they earn a certain number of good behavior stickers. Another form positive reinforcement can take is through verbal praise. This is a simpler display of reinforcement in which you recognize out loud when a student is doing the right thing. So even with children with autism, we would do that a lot with verbal praise, and because they basically said every critical thing you tell a child, you should be saying like 100 positive things. And with yourself too, they were saying, like, as adults. So I mean, I could be off on the numbers. I don't know if it was 100 or 1,000, or it's a lot. You should be doing a lot of positive affirmation, positive reinforcement over and over and over, especially with children with autism who are like feeling frustrated most of the time. So, I worked with really young children. So even something as simple, with special needs, as simple as like, oh my goodness, Jack, I love the way you're sitting in your chair. Over and over, things like that, I would say with such joy, with such like genuine, authentic, like, look at you, because there's gonna be so many times he's not sitting nicely in his chair and he's just losing it. And that's when you kind of step back in the background, make sure he's safe and everything, and provide him with whatever he needs to, ride it out. And but you want to appropriate behavior, whatever you want to call it, like you want to emphasize that you are doing it, like that's you. Right now, you did it, not me. You did it all by yourself. You're awesome, you're a genius, you're amazing. So that verbal praise, it's not just a blanket response like, oh, I like your drawing. No, what the heck do you like about the drawing? Okay, you gotta be specific, you gotta be clear, like you gotta be, wow, you made a multicolored umbrella in your drawing. Look at that. You used red and pink and blue and purple and green and, look at that. Like, really, however you naturally, genuinely talk, you want to do that as much as you can with verbal praise, and just uh, do it as often as you can. And you will see a shift. And that's just, for me now, basic psychology. The more I give my attention where my attention goes, energy flows. That is a basic way of this world as well. So you can see that, you can practice with it as well. The negative side with yourself as an adult, if you want, you can keep putting yourself down and see how that feels. I wouldn't test that out with children, of course, that's horrible and mean. But with yourself, just as an experiment, to be like, oh, that's interesting. And as an adult, it's more like, okay, well, what did I accomplish this week? And then be like, oh my gosh, I did this, this, and this. I'm so proud of you, Emma. You did it. Wow, you got all these things done. Way to go, girlfriend. You know, uh, you talk to yourself more as your best friend. And that can make a huge difference as well. Um, So that option to pick from a prize box after they earn a certain number of good behavior stickers, it sounds kind of utilitarian and all that stuff and like weird. And it did seem weird to me at first when I first saw it, but oh my gosh, it works. And my policy, if it works, it works. And the way it was done was in such a loving and caring way. It wasn't, must be a robot and behave in a certain way. No, it was not like that at all. So, for example, I saw it in the toddler room, and the teacher was like, she was on top of it. She was really well versed in it, and it was with potty training. So they would always get a sticker for even just sitting on the potty and trying. So my settings are off with my alarm here, but anyway, they would, yeah. So it really encouraged them to just even try and sit to try and pee, and like moving away from having a diaper to underwear and using the toilet. Like, it's a huge step and there's so much repetition. So having those stickers, and then once they filled up those 5 boxes of stickers or 10 boxes of stickers or whatever, then they would get to pick from a prize box, and they get something special, like, and it was a surprise. And these were just like little things from the Dollarama, like they're not expensive. So I've seen that with older children too, in the preschool room. And um, this educator teacher, like, her style was more like, I need well behaved preschoolers, otherwise it's going to be like a jungle madness in here. And I've seen that before. So she was really on top of it and consistent as well. So sometimes I was the supply teacher in the room, so I would just get on board and be consistent with what she was doing. So yeah, if you're raising your hand before you ask something, like, they would also get a token, and every child had their name and the chart and the tokens were there, and then they would get something special once they got all their tokens. So whatever her classroom rules were, um, it really, really helped because everything ran more smoothly. There was an environment of respect, and I think that's what really helped something click for me, that, oh my gosh, if you do this in such a way that is, you're very clear about your intentions. It's not about, oh, I'm a dictator and this is how I run my classroom or my household or whatever. No, it's uh, that can not feel the best for the children and everybody who walks in. But I walked into her classroom, it was like that. She knew how to have fun and when to have fun, and she knew uh, when it's good, you know, this is the rule, and are you following the rule or you're not following the rule? That is that simple. And if you are, you get rewarded, you get positive reinforcement. So I hope that example makes sense and helps. So, what is negative reinforcement, according to Skinner? Skinner, in his theories of operant conditioning, negative reinforcement is the removal of an unwanted outcome in order to strengthen a behavioral response. In simpler terms, if you want a person to behave in a certain way, then reward good behavior by taking away something that the person views as negative. I thought that was amazing. At first I was like, negative reinforcement. That sounds mean, but actually it's something very sweet and very nice and very, working with my mom with special needs, you start to pick up on, well, oh, this is something that is negative to her. Let me help her by removing that negative thing right now. And it's very easy to do. It's very something simple, usually in the moment, and it does make a huge difference. She seems to feel more seen and more heard and more, you can feel that compassion flowing back and forth. I love negative reinforcement. It really does help. So, how to apply classical conditioning in the classroom? Teachers can apply classical conditioning in the class by creating a positive classroom environment to help students overcome anxiety or fear. Pairing an anxiety-provoking situation, such as performing in front of a group, with pleasant surroundings helps the student learn new associations. Yeah, we did pairing a lot with children with autism. So, in early childcare settings, that's what we would call the environment as the third teacher. I had a bunch of old saris that I donated to the childcare center, and oh my gosh, some of the teachers, the educators loved it. It's like the way they use these saris too. It's almost like you're walking into a genie's lamp. It was so cool. You're walking into this classroom environment, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it feels so nice and cozy in here. And they put it like up over the ceiling and stuff. So everything, health and safety, fire code was up to, they made sure. So we have very strict rules, especially in Ontario, Canada, with all of those things. So um, they decorated it in such a way that was safe, but also very beautiful and welcoming and inviting, and the bright colors. And even at nap time, the kids are like just staring at these like shimmery things on the saris and falling asleep. Like, it's very nice, and created, a certain atmosphere. So you can do that with sound and music and different things as well. Um, Scent, you know, pleasant surroundings, and it really does have that classical conditioning in the classroom example there. So, what are the three basic principles of behaviorism by Skinner? There are three main approaches within behaviorism: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and observational learning. All three methods involve the process of conditioning, whereby an animal or person learns to associate a particular stimulus with a particular response. And yes, I have used this a lot with animals too, with my own cat that I had for almost 10 years, and dogs that I've worked with, other people's cats. I mean, the mini horses, they just took care of themselves basically. I did all the grunt work, but I don't know, they were like Zen masters, the two mini horses I worked with. So, that doesn't really apply. But um, yeah, it's over and over, like, and I would always give them massage and things like that. And I have their treats, which is like their high reinforcement, and I'd be right in there with the appropriate behavior. Here's your treat, like, um, and inappropriate behavior, just very consistent over and over. Whatever I chose as, like, no, this is the boundary. And with my cat, it was always pushed down on her nose and use my dad voice, that I like to call it dad voice. And I said, no, no, right? And I'm not pushing hard or anything. It's just, it's always the same. Because if you like that with a cat, or if you're like, they're not, it's shaky, baby. It's not gonna work. All right, so you gotta check your energy first, especially with cats. Holy, they will play you like a mother. So it's very, with dogs too, but with dogs I found you can be a little bit more like, it's more about like not feeding into it. So what I was shown from a dog trainer, a professional dog trainer, and that really helped me too, was, they're trying to jump on me, the dog's trying to jump on me, and I wanted to do my cat training thing, like, no, no, right? And she's like, they're gonna go for your finger or something. They're in an excited state. So for them, excitement for dogs, it's just like one thing, right? So whether it's positive or negative, they're in a frenzied kind of state. You want them, when you're interacting with them, to usually be in like a calm state, not their wolf, DNA or whatever. So she's like, just very calmly, hands are, at your center, and you just turn very slowly, calmly turn your back to them. So my back is to them every time they're trying to jump on me, and or my side or whatever. So it's like, no, I'm not allowing this. You can't do this, and you're not jumping on me until they stop. So and then they get the idea, and then they're sitting there like looking at you like, what, what? And then you're like, okay, now it's time, and they're okay, and I can sit in the chair and calmly let them smell me, and do the massage and everything. And if they're continuing to be calm and stuff, here's a treat. So it's all connected. Everything's energy, whether you're working with very small children who are extremely intelligent and pick up on energy, or you're working with animals who are also extremely intelligent and are picking up on energy. They just have a different language, I found, and it's up to us as the human adults to decipher, decode, and learn their love language. So, yeah, what is Pavlov's learning theory? So, this is connected to Skinner. Classical conditioning, the foundation of Pavlov's theory, involves pairing a neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus to elicit a conditioned response. That's a mouthful. In one of his famous experiments, Pavlov observed that dogs naturally salivated when presented with food, an unconditioned stimulus. I mean, that was a huge light bulb for me. I love that example. I mean, again, I don't like experimentation with dogs, but I don't know. If they're doing it in a nice way, it's okay. But um, so the basic thing was, every time the dog was given the food, they were given the conditioned stimulus as well. Like, it was paired with, so you're pairing a neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus to elicit a conditioned response. So, yeah, the food was always given with something regular or normal. And then when that normal thing was presented, the dog is drooling. So they're already like, oh, I'm gonna get the positive reinforcement. So it's very clear cut, basic psychology example, that you can then transform and use with early childcare as well. So, how can a teacher use operant conditioning in the classroom? 3 operant conditioning examples. So, 1, positive reinforcement. Students who line up quietly receive a smiley sticker. 2, negative reinforcement. The teacher ignores the student who shouts out answers but calls on him when he raises his hand. So ignoring inappropriate behavior is the best. So what we said in working with children with autism is ignore the behavior, not the child. So you're never ignoring the child, or if they're climbing on a ledge or doing anything unsafe or that's going to affect their health and safety. We're not giving them direct eye contact or saying anything. We're just literally picking them up, putting them back on the ground where it's nice and safe, and they're not going to get a possible head injury. So ignore the behavior, not the child. I would just add that as well for negative reinforcement. So, number 3, positive punishment. A student gets detention after being late for class too many times. So, I think that's just a really good example of like natural consequences. Calling it positive punishment is interesting, but for me, that's just natural consequences. Like, we all get that, in our daily lives, naturally. If I do this, then this happens. It's the law of cause and effect, basically. So, psychology should be a science of observable and measurable events and behaviors, and that mental states and cognitive processes were irrelevant. So, this is from Behaviorism in Education. What is behavioral learning theory? From nu.edu website. I thought that was just interesting that it is observable and measurable. I mean, most of my job working with children with autism was taking data. We did a lot of data taking, measurable events and behaviors. So that was really, really helpful to kind of back up what we're noticing and observing with actual data. So B.F. Skinner, 1904 to 1990, Advocacy of Behaviorism and its Application to Psychology and Life, Operant Conditioning. This is from Harvard University website. So Skinner argued that the goal of a science of psychology was to predict and control an organism's behavior from its current stimulus situation and its history of reinforcement. In a utopian novel called Walden 2 and a 1971 bestseller called Beyond Freedom and Dignity, he argued that human behavior was always controlled by its environment. According to Skinner, the future of humanity depended on abandoning the concepts of individual freedom and dignity and engineering the human environment so that behavior was controlled systematically and to desirable ends rather than haphazardly. So you can see the positives and the negatives very clearly. I mean, what do you mean abandoning the concepts of individual freedom and dignity? Like, that doesn't sound nice. That doesn't sound right. It's going a little too far, in my opinion. You want to merge, I think, the concepts and marry the best of all these different theorists. But he is speaking to something that is important. When you're that the behavior is consciously and intentionally, I wouldn't say controlled, but guided in such a way to desirable ends rather than haphazardly. So there is a lot of haphazard approaches, with parenting and this and that. Yeah, I mean, you can't take yourself too seriously. That's very important. To loosen up, go with the flow, be spontaneous, have fun. But to be completely haphazard, yeah, you're going to run into a lot of issues, and it affects everything, you know, everything. So, you know, some of these theorists had some way out there ideas, but you can kind of see their intention. It's for like a society that is functioning well and at its highest level. I mean, that is a very pure intention in of itself. But yeah, you can research these guys for yourself and see what you're drawn to and what you're not drawn to. So next is Gardner. I think that's the last one I'm going to go over, and I'll save that for the next video. And I have gone over Gardner a little bit in another video I did earlier on, so please check that out if you're interested. And I hope this helps, and I'm signing off. And that's it for this one, and I wish you well.